Good morning, everyone. Glad you can make it. My name is Ethan, and before I dive into my argument, I'd like to show you a video. Imagine for a moment your favorite song. Think of the melodies and the harmonies that build together to create something special. Think of the dynamics of the music, the rhythms, the crescendos, the variations that combine to create something different. Think of how the vocals are delivered with passion and meaning, and the cadence of the words are used to create something emotional.
Treading water,
Sinking farther, screaming out, I'm
going under.
treading water, sinking farther, screaming out, I'm
Yeah, treading water, trying to stay above it, kinda dreading sinking further. But I'm tired, I can't do this forever. Feel my muscles start to spasm and I'm going under.
The quality of the composition and delivery of a piece can very clearly determine the quality of the song. I mean, imagine the same song, but all of the instruments are playing in completely different keys and the tempo is all off. It likely wouldn't sound good. I was eating with my demons in pandemonium as I'm leaving the... Can we, shut this off, go back to the normal beat? This isn't it. Please? Thank you. Okay. Now imagine all of the instrumentation is back to normal, but the lyrics are lifeless and monotone. It wouldn't hold the same charm as it once did. See, the delivery and the composition are very obvious filters for what is a good song and what is a bad song. However, there is a third element to music that determines the quality, and that is the lyrics. If the lyrics of a song promote evil and lies, the song will have an incredibly negative impact on the listener. I hope you will join me as I embark on this musical journey to find out whether or not we are living in a lyrical lie. Oh man, those guys were pretty cool. Due to the power that lyrics carry, Christians must be conscious of the lyrical content that they consume. Today, I will be discussing the power of lyrics, as well as some of the negative impacts that negative lyrics have on substance abuse and violence normalization. I will then dive into some of the positive effects of positive lyrics, as well as what the Christian response to lyricism should be. Before I dive into that, though, I must introduce where I am coming from. See, I love hip-hop and R&B music, and as you saw earlier, I'm an artist in these two genres myself. Because of this familiarity, many of my references focus on these two genres. However, my argument can be applied to any form of lyrical music, that is, music with lyrics. It is also important to understand the inherent nature of lyrics. See, almost all lyrics can fall into one of two categories, either narrative lyrics or conceptual lyrics. Narrative lyrics are lyrics that tell a story. They share an experience from the artist's life, and they can either be metaphorical or true to life, but they bring you into a full experience. An example of this would be the song In Summer from the movie Frozen, where the sentient snowman Olaf envisions a hot sunny day, and he says that bees will buzz, and kids will blow dandelion fuzz, and I will be doing whatever snow does in summer. I'll have a drink in my hand, and my snow will be up against the burning sand, and I'll probably be getting gorgeously tanned in summer. Now, if you look past the blatant irony of this song, you can see the full story that's progressing. He's laying out both the actions and the direct consequences of those actions. Artists such as Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, Owl City, and Nick D tend to have more narrative lyrics in their songs. Now, the other form of lyrics I mentioned are conceptual lyrics, and conceptual lyrics are, as their name suggests, much more conceptual. These are songs that focus on an idea or a theme rather than a narrative, and the focus is often on the listener's actions and pushing them to grow, or on the general mind state of the artist. An example of this would be the song Happy from the movie Despicable Me, where Pharrell Williams sings, "Because I'm happy, clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy, clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy, clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy, clap along if you feel like that is what you want to do." Notice how the focus of these lyrics are specifically on the concept of happiness, and not the things that caused said happiness. Artists such as 21 Pilots, Kendrick Lamar, Imagine Dragons, and Chance the Rapper have mastered this form of lyricism. Now, these two forms of lyricism are not mutually exclusive. You can have a song that has narrative verses and a conceptual chorus, or vice versa. However, it's important to understand the differences and effects of each. Narrative lyrics describe both the actions and the consequences and draw a direct connection for you, whereas conceptual lyrics just lay out the effects. My argument can be applied to both forms of lyricism. However, due to how common narrative lyrics are and the fact that they draw direct connections for you, the studies that I use primarily use narrative lyrics. Now, lyrics make an impact. However, the perception of that impact that lyrics have has reached an unhealthily low level. Hip-hop exemplifies this, as the genre was created to share perspectives and to advocate for the African American community. According to Regina N. Bradley, an author and researcher at Kennesaw State University, for nearly half a century, hip-hop has served as a mouthpiece for exploring the marginalized experiences of Black and brown people in the United States and abroad. Hip-hop was more than a popular cultural expression. It served as a context for complicating and recognizing a transition into a post-civil rights movement era. She goes on to clarify that hip-hop expresses the angst and struggles of racism, classism, and unresolved identity issues. See, hip-hop sprung out of a place of hurt and was used as a tool to express that pain. Without clear and meaningful lyrics, that would not have made an impact. Without vulnerability and reality, the meaning of the music would have been completely void. This doesn't only apply to secular music either. Whatabar G is a Christian, Latino, hip-hop, and R&B artist whose father was deported when he was 16 years old. In his project entitled Raul, he addresses the pain and the trauma that this caused him. He was having an interview with podcaster and rapper Ruslan, and Ruslan asked him if he's been able to help shift the Christians' perspectives in terms of the immigration issue in America. That by removing politics and saying, quote, "Hey guys, I'm a human, I'm a person, I've got a little brother, and this is how some of these laws have affected me and my family." He has helped people to see the other side. Whatabar G responded that people thank him for his story, just sharing it and being vulnerable. He claims that when somebody you look up to, somebody you admire is going through something, it hits a little different. He thinks because of that, we all have the power to change people's perspectives. Wherever you happen to land on the issue of immigration, his point rings true. Because of the vulnerability and reality that he has expressed through his music and through his lyrics, people have been able to see his perspective. However, as musicality has evolved, the perceived importance has decreased quite a bit. The top two streaming artists in the world in 2022 were Drake and NBA Youngboy. Now, these two artists focus primarily on the production and not the lyricism. And with NBA Youngboy, it's often incredibly difficult to even understand what he is saying. Most of their music focuses on money, sex, and drugs, and yet it still finds massive success. Now, some people may say that, listening to music solely due to the vibe will not have drastic impacts on the paradigm of the listener, but that's just untrue. Not only does the focus and idolization of these things not have a positive effect, but it actually has an incredibly negative impact on the listeners. An example of this would be the focus on alcoholism in music. As someone listens to alcoholic references, even passively, they are more likely to drink more. As they hear Luke Bryan's One Margarita or Eminem's Crack a Bottle, they subconsciously start to believe that alcohol makes everything better and life more enjoyable. A study run by Rutger CME Engels, professor in developmental psychopathology at Erasmus University Rotterdam, found that textual references to alcohol in music played in bars leads to higher revenues on alcoholic beverages. Results were substantial. The average turnover of alcoholic drinks was 18 euros, or nearly $20, higher on an evening with music containing references to alcohol compared to the control condition. Now, this is 2 additional beers per person in the bar, just from having alcoholic references in the lyrics. See, the references hold the power of suggestion, and as someone hears more and more of these references, they begin to develop an urge to drink, and that leads to them drinking more than they should. This doesn't only apply to alcohol, though. It also applies to other substance abuse. Zena Haraketh, a professor and researcher at Utrecht University, explains the concept of the socialization hypothesis, which is based on the social learning theory. She claims that rap and hip-hop artists may function as role models. They often endorse in and glorify substance use, and young people may observe and imitate the positive attitude and behaviors of these high-status role models. Basically, artists are naturally going to be role models. And that, because of that, anything that they promote in their music will become normalized for the listeners. Then when fans get the opportunity to abuse drugs, the dangers are left unseen and they only see what is promoted by the artists. In addition to the increased acceptance of abuse of drugs and alcohol, the lyrics we consume also impacts how we treat other people. Lyrics containing reference to violence correlates directly to an increase in brutality in the worldview of the listeners. A clear-cut example of this is the example of misogynistic lyrics. Misogynistic lyrics, or lyrics that objectify and demean the value of women, are common in many different genres. Pop, hip-hop, R&B, rock, and country music are all plagued with them. In a study developed by Cortland S. Hyatt, a psychology professor at the University of Georgia, it was found that exposure to misogynistic lyrics was associated with greater intensity, duration, and frequency of aggression. After listening to songs that demean the value of women, men were much more likely to be aggressive towards them. I mean, it makes sense. Let me paint this picture for you. A man is driving to work and he's singing along to a song that demeans the value of women. These words that he's singing turn into thoughts and affect the mind state he's in. And then all of his interactions with his female coworkers are filtered through that lens. That's not okay. The concept of violent lyrics propagating violent thoughts extends past just the idea of misogyny, though. A common theme in modern lyricism is the idea that violence is a sufficient solution to the problems of this world. Listening to this kind of music directly correlates to a heightened level of aggression. When discussing the above experiment, Hyatt points to a pre-existing study run by Craig A. Anderson that showed that participants exposed to violent lyrics reported higher levels of state hostility and aggressive cognitions than those who listened to non-violent lyrics. Similar to glorifying substance abuse, listening to hostility expressed positively opens the door for more violent ideas to begin to take hold in the mind of the listeners. This pairs what we see in other content as well. There's been much more research in violence in video games and television, but the concepts apply to lyrics as well. The theory that violent content desensitizes children has been thrown around for years, and psychologist and researcher Craig A. Anderson explains that longitudinal studies have shown that early exposure to TV violence in childhood is related to having more normative beliefs, more accepting of violence even 15 years later in young adulthood. Violent content not only impacts children at the time of the consumption, but also down the line. It leads to more of an acceptance of violence and brutality. This led Anderson to come up with the general learning model, which developed into the general aggression model. The general aggression model is a simplified explanation for the ways that our surroundings push us towards or away from seeing violence as a solution. In his overview of this psychological theory, Anderson writes that short-term increases in aggressive behavior following exposure to violent content or violent media are mainly due to three psychological processes. 1, the priming of or activation of already existing aggressive knowledge structures. 2, simple mimicking of aggressive behaviors. And 3, changes in physiological arousal simulated by media violence. Basically what Anderson's doing is he's dividing the impact of violent media into 3 parts. 1, first, is the activation and enhancing of pre-existing violent thoughts. Second is the following of the example of someone else's hostility. And the third, this is the most dangerous, is actual changes in the outlook on life. Now, all 3 of these things are not just a product of watching violent content, but also listening to violent lyrics. But there is good news. For every detrimental effect that negative lyrics have, there's a beneficial effect to listening to uplifting music. Thoughtful lyricism can help people feel seen and heard and can encourage them to grow. Due to the negative impact that lyrics have, that negative lyrics can have, it shouldn't be a surprise that positive lyrics can have a positive impact as well. According to author, philosopher, and rock music enthusiast Barry A. Farber, people who search for meaning or yearn for growth almost invariably experience some amount of doubt along their journey. He goes on to give examples of artists who encourage their listeners to persevere through their doubts. The positive lyrics we listen to can push us to grow. They can encourage us. They can affirm that we are not alone. The lyricism and messages that we listen to can help dispel some of the lies that the world tells us about ourselves and about our loneliness. In his song Therapy Session, NF, who is a popular artist who gained his following by being real and vulnerable, describes an interaction he had with a fan. And he asks you to imagine someone looking at you and saying that your music is the reason that they are alive. Now, this is a powerful testimony, and it shows the true power that thoughtful lyrics can have. Now, this does not only apply to mainstream artists. Lyrics have a drastic impact on everyone who hears them. Independent artist John Keith reflected on how he has been impacted and how he is now able to impact others in his song The Life of the Party, where he says, "I remember feeling like he understood. I never thought that I would do the same. I never thought that I would reach the point where the kids tell me that I make a change." In this little segment of this song, he's talking about how another artist's lyrics helped him to push through a hard time in his life, and how now, as an artist himself, he's able to do the same thing. And as someone who's been impacted by John Keith's lyrics, I can say that this is completely true. His project, Eremos, focuses on the theme of addressing when you're not okay. And it's touched my life in a crazy way, helping to encourage me to face some of my hurts and to help me grow. This topic came up in my conversation with up-and-coming Christian hip-hop and boom-bap artist Apex Frazier. See, Apex Frazier is from a broken home. Apex Frazier was an immigrant. Apex Frazier was diagnosed with FSHD, which is a muscular life-changing disease, at the age of 16. He reflected on how turning to art has been a place for him to cope with that, but also to bring hope and healing to others. He's claimed that it's been a really cool double-edged sword. Because of the vulnerability he's had in his music, he's helped other people to see the hope that he has, despite the trauma that he has been through. And I have seen the same thing in my music. Now, I have a much, much smaller audience, but I've still had people reach out to me and share how my vulnerability has helped them to feel seen, known, and loved. In addition to the idea that deep, thoughtful lyrics can encourage and push us, Christians specifically have even more riding on the importance of the lyrics that they consume. We are called to be intentional with the things that we focus on. As I continued my conversation with Apex Frazier, he had a great take on the importance of lyricism that reflects the gospel when I asked him about the narrative that he tells on his project, The Loved One. He claimed that people under the age of 30 want something tangible, and the gospel sadly does not seem tangible to very many people. So he puts his emphasis on telling the beautiful gospel story through something that is more tangible, and then pointing people to the actual scriptures. Imagine if that was the kind of content that we consumed. Content that pointed to Jesus around every single corner. Now, Apex's goal is to reach people who don't fully understand the beauty of the gospel. But that doesn't mean that it can't be a great reminder for us as well. As our conversation continued, Apex went on to say why he strives for excellence in his art. He expressed that we are a reflection of God, and to reflect the perfect God is impossible. But we should always strive to do the best we can. He believes that by releasing non-edifying, non-excellent art, that is a bad representation of who God is. My argument is that this does not only apply to artists releasing music, but also listeners listening to music that does not edify. We reflect Christ, so the things that we focus on should honor and reflect him as well. The Bible tells us as much. Philippians 4:8 confirms this, saying, Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. We are called to focus on the things that are worthy of our praise. And based on what we've gone over, we can see why. The negative impact of negative lyrics and the positive impact of positive lyrics point us towards the same direction. Now, living this out might mean that we don't focus on lyrics that promote debauchery, misogyny, substance abuse, or violence. Now, I'm not saying that all mainstream music is evil, but I am saying that all evil mainstream music is evil. We're called to be set apart, and that might mean not listening to specific artists or songs who we've grown fond of. That might mean not listening to the music that the world around us listens to. I can promise you there's music out there that has good sonic quality as well as good lyrics, and it's not that hard to find. With all that being said, imagine for a moment your favorite song. Think of the melodies and the harmonies that build together to create something special. Think of the dynamics of the music, the rhythms, the crescendos, the variations that combine to create something different. Think of how the vocals are delivered with passion and meaning, and the cadences of the words are used to create something emotional. Now reflect on whether or not the lyrics of that song speak life or death. Whether the lyrics of that song build you up or tear you down. Whether the lyrics of that song promote violence, debauchery, and substance abuse, or kindness, sobriety, and growth. The content of the music that you listen to shapes you. How do you want to be shaped? Thank you.